Part 1.
You will hear a conversation between a printing company employee and a customer. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Matrix Printing. I'm John Smith. How can I help you?
Good afternoon. I'm here to reprint a brochure for our hotel. There are some pages that need revising.
Sure. How may I address you?
Oh, I'm Mary Jane from Central Hotel Chains. Nice to meet you. I've got samples of the previous version.
I assume it is your company's advertising brochure.
Yes.
What exactly is the problem?
Well, it was printed the year before, so some of the information is already out of date. There are also a couple of problems with the layout. Firstly, the letters of the address on the front page are far too small. It's hard to see when glancing at the cover.
How big do you need it to be?
Increase the letters by 3 font sizes.
Just a minute. Let me take notes of your requirements. Okay. What else needs changing?
The information regarding the pool should be deleted because it is currently under renovation and is not available.
So, all of the relevant descriptions on page 2 should be removed? What do we replace it with? We can't just leave the whole page blank.
Just fill it in with the introduction of our newly opened gym. I've included all the relevant information here in this flash drive.
Let me check. I see. No problem then.
What is also bothering us is that the description under the top photos on page 4 is incorrect. The word lounge needs to be replaced with reception.
Fully noted. Is that all?
No, there is more. Turn to page 5. We feel that showing merely the picture of our exterior and interior decoration does not fully represent the appeal of our hotel. On second thought, we've decided to use a picture with the view of the hotel.
Do you have the original copy of the picture?
Yes, it is also enclosed in the flash drive.
Okay. We'll re-edit the whole layout of the photos.
Great.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
Let's turn to the next page.
Yes. What's wrong with that? It seems perfectly fine to me.
At first sight it seems fine, but according to the feedback of the customers, the prices do not stand out. So, we want to change the print from black to red to make it pop out.
Okay, I've made notes of all of your requests. Is there anything else?
I appreciate it. Just one final request. Could you translate the whole brochure into Spanish? We have customers worldwide, you know, especially those from Latin countries.
No problem. What about other languages, like Japanese, Chinese, or German? These are our most popular target languages.
I have to ask the manager about the Chinese version. There's been a surging number of Chinese clients during recent years. However, we don't need German or Japanese translations, as we currently don't have many customers from those two countries.
Sure. Just keep me updated.
So, roughly, when can we get the revised print? We need it before the end of July.
It's late June now. Roughly, it'll take 3 weeks to re-edit. so it will definitely be ready before the deadline.
Great.
To where shall we send the samples?
The address is number 9 Green Drive, Clifton, NY 21300.
How do you spell Clifton?
CLIFFTON. Clifton.
And the telephone number?
It's 9030366602. Also, if you have any further questions, you can reach me through this number.
Okay.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
Part 2.
You will hear a talk about the history of a poetry award. You have 30 seconds to look at questions 11 to 15.
Hello everyone, and welcome to this year's award ceremony for the Antonia Watson Memorial Poetry Award. As with previous years, the competition has been particularly fierce and we received numerous excellent entries, so it's an incredible achievement for our 3 finalists who are sitting here amongst you, and we should congratulate them all. However, as with every competition, there can unfortunately only be one winner, and we will be announcing them shortly. Before we do, though, a few words about the award itself. As most of you know, the Antonia Watson Memorial Poetry Award has been presented annually since 2010 and was presented biannually for 2 more competitions prior, once in 2008 and once in 2006. It is entirely funded by Antonia Watson's very generous parents, who offer £1,500 to the author of the best poem on a topic announced at each previous award ceremony, as well as £500 to the first runner-up and £250 to the second, bringing the total up to £2,250. Now, a few words on Antonia Watson herself, without whom none of us would be standing here today. I briefly knew Antonia while at university, where we were flatmates for a year, and I'm afraid that any speech I give will not be able to do her justice, as she was the kindest, sweetest person I've ever met. Thankfully, this part of my speech was written with the assistance of one of her siblings, Thomas Watson, who was not only her brother, but also her best friend. Antonia was born in Slayford, Lincolnshire, in December 1986. From a very young age, she displayed an inquisitive and creative nature, matched in volume only by the gentle kindness of her spirit. She wrote her first poem, named Love Barks, about the death of her dog at the age of 10. This was also her first poem to be published at her school's newspaper, just 2 months after another of her poems, Be Kind, won the 1996 Triad Children's Writing Competition and was published in the competition's anthology. While her early forays into poetry were crowned with impressive success, Antonia unfortunately ceased to write for a few years following the death of her very dear grandfather, Peter William Watson, in 1999.
You now have 30 seconds to look at questions 16 to 20.
Despite her writer's block, however, her artistic nature didn't lie dormant during the next 4 years. She had an active role in various theatre plays, and she also ventured into painting. A few of the plays are available on the internet, and you can find several of her self-portraits on our website, and you can see for yourself how impressive they are. But poetry, of course, remained her passion even then, which is why in 2003 she resumed writing, and her next poem, The War on Both Sides, was published in her college's journal. At the age of 18, Antonia moved to Sheffield to study English literature at the University of Sheffield. This is where she and I met, spending a whole year in adjacent rooms in a flat in central Sheffield. This is also where I met her good-natured, generous parents, Mr. and Mrs. Watson, who came to visit her regularly and always treated me like a daughter as well. Antonia and I grew very close during that period, and while we ran in different circles, we always found time for each other every week. Antonia self-published one collection of poems in August 2005. It was named Burning Stars, after the poem on page 16, which is also the date of her birthday. It was an immediate success amongst her peers at the University of Sheffield, and it was so cherished by her English literature classmates specifically that it had attracted the attention of one of her lecturers, who put her in touch with a literary agent. She had been due to begin working on her second collection right before her tragic passing in a car accident just 5 days before her 19th birthday in December 2005. Antonia was always interested in societal shifts and how they affect humanity as well as the environment, and this award was designed to reflect her faith that regardless of what we do, we are all inherently good. With this in mind, all of the topics this competition has dealt with have been about the potential and the positive side of humanity, such as this year's Young Love theme or last year's Inner Power theme. We've had poems about personal strength, about immigration, about gender equality and peaceful protest. And hopefully in 12 months, the poems we'll be awarding will be just as inspiring with the topic of poverty. I know Antonia would be really proud of what her parents and what all of you together have achieved. So, finally, let's get on with the actual award. As I said before, it's been a fierce competition this year, and with more than 5,000 entries, it was quite the task for our 3 judges to cut them down to just 3. But our 3 finalists definitely deserve to be here, and without further ado, I would like to.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3. Part 3.
You'll hear a tutor and 3 students discussing their work. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 27. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 27.
Good morning everyone. Well, in today's tutorial we're going to discuss the essays that you have to submit by the end of next week. Some of you will have already started them, which is good, and if you haven't, well, that's okay, but you'll have to get a move on. So, let's begin with you, Simon. What's happening with you?
Well, I've made a start on it. I researched the background quite extensively last weekend, and I should get to the writing stage tomorrow with a bit of luck, and I'll get finished at the weekend.
What are you writing about?
I decided to look at the car manufacturing company Jaguar, examine the problems they had with reliability in the 1970s and 80s, how they dealt with it, and how it affected their marketing and sales strategy.
That sounds pretty interesting. Any problems with that?
At the start I had problems getting information from that far back, but after rooting around in the library I found some magazines which gave me information and also gave me references to find other stuff. It seems now the only problem is keeping to the 4,000 word limit. It just seems that I have so much to write about. It seems I'll need 5,000 or even 6,000 words to be able to cope.
Yes, your essay title seems to me to be very wide-ranging. Would you think about cutting out part of it? How about looking at their sales and marketing strategy, but only mentioning the problems in the 70s and 80s and not going too far into it?
That's a good idea. That will make it much easier to handle. By the way, how do you want us to hand in our work? Do you want us to drop in a hard copy to your office?
You could do that, but I'd prefer it if you just emailed it to me as an attachment. You've all got my address. If not, give it to the secretary, clearly marked that it's for me. Right, Jennifer, how about you?
I've not really got going on it yet, but I have decided on a subject. I'll try and do some research during the rest of this week, and I should get writing this weekend.
Okay, what are you writing about then?
I want to look into how supermarkets use market surveys to develop their products.
Will you have enough time to find out what sort of things that the supermarkets do? You won't have much time for that.
It should be okay. I've had a look in the stack system in the library and I found a magazine that surveyed all the UK major supermarkets and a trade publication that analysed the same things in Canadian supermarkets.
Be careful about using their conclusions too much. The university takes a tough stance on plagiarism. Make sure you properly list where you get your information from in a bibliography and try and do your own analysis. Get going too, as that analysis will take a bit of time.
Okay, thanks.
You now have some time to look at questions 28 to 30. Now listen to the rest of the discussion and answer questions 28 to 30.
And Melanie, how is your work going?
I'm a bit behind, I'm afraid. I was sick all last week and the weekend with flu. I've got a subject, I think, but I've not done any work on it yet. Is there any chance I can get an extension to the submittal date?
The policy of the department is not to give any extensions unless there are extenuating circumstances. Do you have a doctor's certificate or anything?
I went to the doctor's, but I didn't get a note as I didn't realise I would need it. The doctor will have a record of me, though, as I got a prescription. I'll go back and get one.
Yes, do. If you get one, then there shouldn't be a problem getting an extension. Without it, though, you'll be in trouble. What subject are you considering, anyway?
I thought I'd do an overview of the UK mortgage interest rates and their effect on housing sales trends over the last 10 years. I thought it might be of interest because of the huge increases of house prices over the last decade.
Certainly an interesting subject, and it should be no great problem getting information, as this has been fairly well documented. There's a lot of work again, though, and you'll really need to get cracking on it, even with the extension, if you get one.
Well, I've not got much on for the rest of the week, and I've set aside the weekend to really get to grips with it.
Good. Now, is there anything else?
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4.
You will hear part of an Earth Sciences lecture. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Good afternoon and welcome to this Earth Sciences lecture. Today we're going to look at tidal waves, or more correctly, tsunami. Deep below the ocean's surface, tectonic plates collide, and every once in a while these forces produce an earthquake. The energy of such submarine earthquakes can produce tidal waves which radiate out in all directions from the epicenter of the quake, moving at speeds of up to 500 miles per hour. When these waves reach shore, they can cause enormous destruction and loss of life. Tidal waves are actually misnamed. They are not caused by tides. A more accurate word for them is the Japanese name tsunami, which means harbour wave. They are also sometimes called seismic sea waves, since they can be caused by seismic disturbances such as submarine quakes. However, that name is not really accurate either, since tsunami can also be caused by landslides, volcanic eruptions, nuclear explosions, and even impacts of objects from outer space, such as meteorites, asteroids, and comets. Earthquakes, though, are the largest cause of tsunami. Tectonic plates cover the world's surface, and their movement can be detected anywhere in the world. Some areas of the world are more prone to greater movement, and it is in these places that the largest waves can occur. Large vertical movements of the Earth's crust occur at plate boundaries, which are known as faults. The Pacific Ocean's denser oceanic plates are often known to slip under continental plates in a process known as subduction. And subduction earthquakes are the most effective in generating tsunamis. A tsunami can be generated by any disturbance that displaces a large water mass from its equilibrium position. In the case of earthquake-generated tsunamis, the water column is disturbed by the uplift or subsidence of the sea floor. Submarine landslides, which often accompany large earthquakes, as well as collapses of volcanic edifices, can also disturb the overlying water column as sediment and rock slump down, and are redistributed across the sea floor. Violent submarine volcanic eruptions can create an impulsive force that uplifts the water column and generates a tsunami. Conversely, supermarine landslides and cosmic body impacts disturb the water from above as momentum from falling debris is transferred to the water into which the debris falls. Generally speaking, tsunamis generated from these mechanisms, unlike the devastating Pacific-wide tsunamis caused by earthquakes, dissipate quickly and rarely affect coastlines distant from the source area. Tsunamis are very hard to detect, since they cannot be seen when they are in the deep ocean. The distance between two wave crests can be 500 kilometers, and because of this, the wave height is only a few feet. Because the rate at which a wave loses its energy is inversely related to its wavelength. Tsunamis not only propagate at high speeds, they can also travel great transoceanic distances with limited energy losses. As the tsunami reaches shallow water, however, its speed decreases, but the energy it contains remains about the same. Instead of travelling fast, the wave rises high. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration has set up a seismic detection system to monitor earthquakes and predict the possible arrival of tidal waves for Pacific countries. Buoys at sea can also detect water pressure changes that can indicate tsunamis moving through the ocean. But when tsunamis originate near the shore, there is often little chance to warn people. Let's look at some examples of tsunami and their causes and effects. Some can be relatively harmless. In 1992, an offshore landslide caused a tidal wave of only about 3 feet high that struck at low tide, so Humboldt County, where it hit, got off easy with no casualties. On January 13th in 1992, a Pacific Ocean earthquake off the coast of San Salvador, registering 7.6 on the Richter scale, did not cause any ocean disturbance at all. However, a recent tidal wave which struck Papua New Guinea on July 17, 1998, was 23 feet high and killed at least 1,200 people. This wave was caused by a magnitude 7.1 submarine earthquake. On July 17, 1998, a Papua New Guinea tsunami killed roughly 3,000 people. A huge underwater volcanic eruption 15 miles offshore was followed within 10 minutes by a wave some 40 feet tall. The villages of Arop and Warapu were destroyed. One of the worst tsunami disasters engulfed whole villages along Sanriku, Japan, in 1896. An underwater earthquake induced a wave of 35 feet, drowning some 26,000 people. Finally, about 8,000 years ago, a massive undersea landslide off the coast of Norway sent a 30-foot wall of water barreling into the uninhabited north coast of Europe. If this were to recur today, as scientists say it could, almost anywhere in the world it would cost billions, if not tens of billions of dollars, to repair the damage to coastal cities and kill tens of thousands of people.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Inside won't let me quit. I swear that